Welcome to Fitnosophy, build your body, realize yourself. I'm your host, Gaia Domenici. I have a PhD in philosophy, I'm a certified nutrition and health coach, and a personal trainer in the making. This is my podcast, where we'll be discussing how body, mind, and spirit are all connected and how their balance defines our health. If you're passionate about training, nutrition, and overall optimal performance, then you're in the right place. Hi Selena, how are you?
Hi, Guy. I'm fine. It's quite
So,
hot here today,
is it okay? No,
but it's good.
it's not that hot in London though. It's been raining all morning. So, guys, I'm here with Selena Pastorino. Um, I'm not ashamed to say that she's one of my best friends. I've known her for quite a long time. I guess it's been 9 years, so something like that. And we met each other when we were both pretty much at the beginning of our PhD adventure. And I think, if I recall correctly, we met at the conference which was hosted by my uni in Pisa. And
Yes.
yeah, and then we met. Yes, and then she sent me an invitation to join a conference in Switzerland if I wanted to in August, which I happily accepted because it was a super fun experience that we did. And so that was the first of many other times. And like fun facts about us. So something that you sure don't know, she's the one who took the picture of my brand logo. So the picture on the where I'm sitting on the rock on the like by the lake, she took in Sils Maria in Switzerland, which was the place where
Yes, that was the conference.
that was that conference in the one where she invited me at. And so that was the rock when where Nietzsche had allegedly the intuition of the eternal return, because he was watching that rock and the triangle, and he had this kind of intuition in mind. So when we went to this conference, we went for trip couple of times. We went for a hike in the mountain next to this awesome lake. And obviously we were all young students. We were all future scholars of Nietzsche. So we were, as soon as we all saw the rock, the famous one, and we were pointed towards the rock, someone told us that's the rock, and we were all like wanted to take pictures of us on the rock. So we've got a couple of pictures of us together as well, and other friends with our close friend Irene Treccani as well. That was a nice experience. And me and Selena are also both members of an association. I don't even know what to call it, because it's it's called a seminar, but it's not really a seminar. And that's an Italian I would call it association of,
It's like a research group.
it's like
Maybe.
let's call it a research group, because it's never been institutionalized or officialized in any way. So, but it does exist. Everyone knows it. Just doesn't exist legally, like and which is called Seminario Permanente Nietzscheano, meaning permanent seminar of Nietzsche studies, or like on Nietzsche. And we meet once a year around Christmas time, and we pick a topic, and we discuss this topic. It's around 20 scholars of Nietzsche who are all members of this seminar, of this research group. And plus there are some other scholars or students that want to join us every year. So that's another very good experience. and yeah, and then we've been to Germany together, and to many other places together. We would have a lot of memories to tell you guys about, but that's not why we decided to meet today. Reason why we decided to meet today, and by the way, thanks a lot for joining me. I forgot to thank you. So
Thank you for the invitation.
my pleasure. Reason why we decided to do this podcast together is because Selena published this awesome book, um, which is called Filosofia della Danza, meaning philosophy of dance. She's a ballerina, and she's been practicing ballet for a very long time. She's gonna uh, tell us all about that. And but because she's also got the PhD in philosophy, and she's actually a high school teacher, she teaches history and philosophy, both in secondary school. So, and she's super passionate about um, the intermingle of body and mind, like myself. So because of all these reasons, she decided to write a book, which is not just about so you might think this book is about philosophy of the dance in terms of a speculation, like theoretical speculation on dance, but this is not what the book is about. That would be reductive. And on the other hand, this is not only about letting dance speak and engage with you in a philosophical conversation either. This book is kind of a mixture of both, and she's gonna tell us much more about it. So the book is in Italian. However, this lady right here, I believe that's the author, she wrote a brilliant review in English, which you can find here. I'm gonna then link this in the show notes. So if you guys want to have a more precise idea of what this book is about, you can look this up. So now, yes, I'll leave my guest tell about her super awesome book, which, by the way, I hope will be translated in English as well sometime in future, because I think it would appeal to a lot of passionate dancers and scholars and just anyone interested in how the body and the mind can cooperate in the creation of something greater. So tell us about yourself, like if you can tell us your story in brief, because people don't know who you are apart from what I've just said. And so who you are, where you come from, what kind of plans you've got for the future. You guys don't know, but she's got a beautiful daughter who's still a toddler, but she's super cute. And yeah, and then just tell us about your book, how you came up with the idea, and anything you really want to tell us about that book.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm, as Gaia already said, we met as PhD student or about to be PhD student, and we share this desire to study Nietzsche's philosophy. It was a desire at the time, and then it became something more professional, something more accurate. Before I met Gaia, I have been studying philosophy as she herself did, and my so to say, my path in philosophy is quite the same as Gaia's, although we studied in different city. I'm from Genoa. Well, Gaia is from Pisa. They are not so far from each other. So that's the reason why we met at the conference by your university. I just had to took the train in the morning and I was there 2 hours later. And after the university, I had a chance to get a PhD in philosophy. I would like to go on in the academic career. And I would like to say that because I know that's a topic about which Gaia spoke before, and it's something that we share, although it's not as funny memory as being together in Sils Maria. But we kind of wanted both to go through the academic career. We got stopped by the circumstances, by the way the study is intended in some academia. Not every university is the same, but in some places you have to be more, I would say you have to be more limited, not really focused, but really limited in what you want to do. And so that's the reason why I couldn't go through. I had the chance the same year I got my PhD to have like a degree to teach in high school. And then I took that path, which is great because I also got the chance to teach dance. And I think that through teaching, you learn something more about yourself, about the subject that you are teaching. So it's a very good exchange. I learn so much from my students, although they are very young because they are from 17 to 20, but they are so curious. They are more spontaneous in their questions. And so I have the chance to question myself about things that I would tend to take as granted. So I continue to research and write in philosophy. Although I don't have a place in the university, I just I use my job as a teacher as a paying job, and then I have my real job, which is not paying much in terms of money, but is paying more in terms of satisfaction and well-being. And for the dance, I started to study ballet as I was a child. I can remember myself saying to my mom something like, why didn't we came up with dance before? Like I've tried so many sports, and then at some point I've got my first dance lesson, and I was like, that's it. And I was 7 years old, but I was quite clear that that was me, that has something to do with myself. Then I stopped studying as I got a little brother, because family, it's a very, I would say it's a very close nest. And I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to have my dance lesson in the afternoon and not being with my mom. I was very jealous. Maybe I was also transitioning to teenage, so it wasn't the best time to continue something. And I got back to ballet as I was 15, and then I never left. I found my teacher, which is still nowadays my teacher, Simona Boninsegni, and I just started a journey through myself. It wasn't just something that I did or that I do. It's something that I have to do in some way. I can't stop doing. I was taking class as I was pregnant, as I was very pregnant. I took class as I was teaching 2 hours commute from here. And I just have one class per week, but I have to do that class. I couldn't just stop doing dance and ballet. And that is just to say that is something very important to me, although I'm not a professional dancer. And I think that at some point the two dimensions started to communicate to each other, and I started to have a sort of idea for this book when I started to realize that many dancers were so deep in their correction, in their explanation of the steps. It occurred to me to take class with a professional dancer as master classes, and they were so philosophical in what they were saying, although they maybe didn't have any philosophical study. And I was so interested about it. And then at some point I met my editor of the Il Melangolo, which is the place where I published my book. Yeah, the publisher. And we were talking about a Nietzsche book, and then it just said, but I was thinking, would you like in the future to write something about the philosophy of dance? And I was like, that's the book of my life. Yes, please. And it was hard to find a way to put all of this in a book. Also because, Gaia, writing is something that tend to make things still and definite. And this is a process. This is like life for me. So it wasn't easy, but I think I put something of my experience in there.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to agree like 100% on this, because I'm actually going through something quite similar, because I'm in the process of writing this book on, let's call it philosophy of bodybuilding, even though it's not, because this way would sound like a copy of your own book, but that's not what the book is about. But that's just to make it short. And I had to say that there's so many things that I have to leave out, which would still be extremely relevant to an excellent, more comprehensive discussion. And but there's no room for them in a book, in a written book, because not only are words still in the book, but your readers must also be put in a position from which they can reference, and also reference back to someone else you reference in your book. So you need to literally provide references, and a lot of like literature, scientific studies. You need to provide them, you need to provide your readers with tools to do their own studies. And that's something that is not always possible in topics which are popular in the sense of something trendy at the moment, or pop, such as dance or bodybuilding or the fitness industry more broadly. And but also more mobile in their own definition of what they are. So it's because it's the opposite, like sports or disciplines are the opposite of rigidity by definition.
Yeah.
So per se, they can't be encapsulated within rigid structures and fixed forms. And which is why I prefer the podcast format to discuss a lot of topics which are, say, not within the average. So I think there's like a spectrum. So there are extremes of the spectrum, and at these extremes are topics which can be discussed, even though you can't really you can't really explore them, you can't really analyze them with the most scientific rigorous tools. So you leave those tools for what's in the middle, what can be discussed formally, but then you still got those opposites, you still got those ends, and for those you have blogs, you have posts, you have podcasts, videos, and chats, which are not like small talk chats, they are like more profound chats, but they can be treated as scientific, as a scientific piece of literature would. And I think, I don't know, I'm just, yeah, just because I'm free, I can say that. I think in the future, more room will be given to this kind of format as well. Possibly people will start analyzing videos and podcasts and blogs from a more scientific approach as well. Like they might start to include those as among the references when they write dissertation, and I can see this is already happening to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I think, language evolves, and this is part of the language. So maybe in 20 years from now, it won't be that uncommon to find people who actually reference podcasts or blog posts within their more scientific sort of publications.
Yeah, we quite do the same already with interviews and biography and notebooks that were left or published by some people that have lived what we try to talk about. I completely agree. It was difficult trying to find the status questionis, like what is written about scientifically on this, what we can relate to, what is the condition of the researches about this topic. And I think there is a big problem, and I think a certain philosophy is going to try to find a solution to this. We have struggled to find scientific literature about what we try to talk about, like dance or bodybuilding or just bodily experiences, because most of scientific literature has to be detached, like we are trying to find something that could be said objectively, that has nothing to do with your own experience, with my own experience, but you can't talk about a body like that. And I swear, I read a book about philosophy of dance. In the first part, in the introduction, they just stated, we are not dancer. We believe that we don't have to be dancer in order to write something philosophical about dance. That would be like a disturbance. Like you can't concentrate on something theoretically if you have experienced it with your own body. I was like, okay, so what are you talking about? It's like an aesthetical experience. Okay, right, you can talk about the Mona Lisa also if you aren't able to take a brush in your own hand, but it's something like different. I think philosophy, literature of a certain level, lack of this connection with life, with body, with experience. There are so many philosophers that are ashamed of being a body, a human being, a concrete human being.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
That's the reason why I find that your book would be super interesting, because you are experiencing what you would be talking about. And that's the reason why in my book I have to turn to text written by dancers and choreographers instead of just literature about dance. There are quite few thinkers that are very, very profound and they maybe have experienced some dance in themselves, or they are just more sensitive to the subject, that has written very, very good texts. But most of the things that were meaningful to read for my book were words from choreographers and dancers, how they live their, day after day dancing.
Because I think you don't, so whether, so you have to be a dancer to have a dance philosophy, because if you're not a dancer, you can't possibly understand all the nuances. But you don't have to be a philosopher to have your own philosophy, because just by doing something, you develop a system out of it. That doesn't mean that your system reflects all the conventional philosophical rules, but those rules just exist to, I don't know, to legitimate this very system within academia. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be this anti-academic, but I think everyone agrees on this. Probably not the logics. So maybe if someone has studied logics, they might disagree because they think that logic explains all, everything in the world. So, and I'm not gonna, I'm not going to debate any of them because I lose, because they've got the logics on their side. So guys, don't even try, because I wanna have accept your debate. But as a Nietzschean, as Nietzschean scholars, I think we can agree that on science and logics not encompassing the whole reality, and
Yeah.
And not that this whole reality is something that exists per se, but it's how we experience this reality. And by the way, Selena also wrote another excellent book on perspectives. So on perspectivism, in the sense of bodily experiences of being and becoming in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it so
I won't be able to resume it either, so you did a great job there.
Thank you. No, anyway, it's a really good book, and that was the subject of her PhD dissertation. But I think we can agree, and I'm sure there are many of you guys who agree with us on this. You don't need to be a philosopher to have your own philosophy, unless you want this philosophy to reflect certain academic rules. But you need to practice a certain discipline to write or to even think about this very discipline, because otherwise you would just be someone speculating on something which you've never experienced, and that wouldn't make any difference with someone exactly talking about Mona Lisa without even knowing how to paint. And that could make sense from aesthetics, so from an aesthetical point of view, but it wouldn't make sense as an experience. So you could write about it maybe as a historian of art, maybe as someone who experiences
critics, maybe
maybe as a critic as well, like or as I was thinking about Heidegger as well, and what an artistic experience elicits in your being and in your
as a public, you can say something as someone that just experience the art as a result of someone else doing art. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No.
I would say that I agree with you, just that I think that I would say that there's a philosophical system, so to say, a philosophical academia style, but there's also a difference between having a philosophy and doing philosophy, which is quite the same, I would say, as dancing and practicing dance. It's a matter of discipline, I would say. I mean, you can have your own philosophy, but maybe if you study philosophy, not just history of philosophy, I mean, if you practice your brain, yourself, with the subject, you would gain different tools in order to make your experience more deep, more profound, more meaningful for you.
Mm-hmm.
And in dance, it's like looking at my daughter dancing, because she dances a lot. Like every time she hears the music, and that's dance. I mean, that's dance. You can't say anything different from that. But it's not the same dance that I do when I go to ballet classes. I think you need to focus on acquiring a practice, a discipline, acquiring tools, acquiring a method, so to say, but that can't be something that you use just for itself. You have to use it for something else.
Yeah.
That in this way, I agree. I found so many dancers that were so centered in themselves and has a wide perspective on reality as they were philosophers. And that is having a philosophy. Maybe if they had also an education, not in the scholar sense of the word, maybe
training,
they could
like
even do
training,
like a train. Maybe they could even do something more with their own perspective. I agree with you. Is like always a question of how would you use your experience, not just having an experience.
Yes,
like that.
I think it sounds better this way. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you can basically, so you can have, so having an experience is kind of the first step. Then you need to be able to rephrase this experience and possibly even reflect on this experience in a more, let's call it, philosophically sound way, maybe. And
and everyone would have need of a different amount of philosophical training. I mean, I work as a philosopher, you work as a philosopher also, among the many things that we both do. But maybe my daughter wouldn't work as a philosopher, wouldn't read as much philosophy, as passionate about philosophy, but maybe she would need a bit of philosophy just to, get things right. And it is as dance, as training, as physical training. Maybe you don't have to have a whole career in dancing or in bodybuilding. Maybe you just need to find some exercises, some way of behaving with your own body that can be useful for you, for your life, your project, and so on.
Yes, and that's, I mean, this leads us towards the core of your book, which we're gonna talk about in a sec. But just before digging into that, I wanted to ask you one question, because which will also help us transition into the book more specifically. So you mentioned that, I don't know if you mentioned while we were recording on, or just you mentioned that to me anyway. So, and that's written in your book as well, that basically you kind of perceive dance as a union between body and mind, and as a cooperation between body and mind, which allows the mind to perceive the body differently. and but it's not a reduction to the body. And my question before going into detail with that is, how has this kind of relationship shifted your own spirituality as well, and how has this kind of body, mind, and spirit relationship that you've experienced in your ballet experience and practice um, led you towards self, your own self actualization and your own self becoming. So what's the spiritual part in it, and what role has such a spiritual part played in your whole self becoming, basically?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, I
No,
mean,
I mean, no, it's big because it's like, as said before, it's like trying to put life in a sentence.
yes,
But it was something I think I started to become aware of this connection during the years, through the years of studying ballet. And not only ballet, I mean, through my life experience, but specifically in dance class, I have to I have to realize at some point that somehow that place, me being dancing, was something that was of my own, that has something to do with myself. I could feel good only when I could practice. Even though I'm not as good a dancer as someone could think by saying, by listening to me, it's hard practicing. It's not something that you do and you just look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, I'm so nice. I would do that, because it's like, it's not like an ego boost. It's hard, it's difficult, but somehow it's a work that it's a positive work. Like being tired after you have done something, you accomplished something, you say, okay, I maybe have done better lesson before, but in that tiny little moment, I was so happy in doing my port de bras and just being at the bar. That makes everything else worth it. So I started to have this, awareness that it was something important to me, not just something that I did, but something that I was in a certain way. And then it took me actually years to try to find this connection as something that could be positive for me. Writing the book and having a daughter have both played a big role in I would say in letting me find the balance between body and mind and my spiritual growth, because writing the book like forced myself to have a clear vision about what was that I was doing. And having a daughter let me have, like a truce, and in the word that were against my body. It's not easy to do ballet because it demands a lot from a body, and not everyone is born with a ballet body. I mean, everyone can practice ballet with their own body, but for someone would be easier.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that easy. Plus, I am a woman. I live in this world. So I didn't have a good relationship with my body. Until I realized that my body could do something without me having control on it, and that something wasn't like something like a disease, that I don't have control on my body because something is going wrong, but it was a whole person. I made a person with my body, and that experience, it could be that kind of epiphany, revelation. You can have it from many different experience. For me, it was pregnancy, but it could be something like completely different. At some point, I just realized, okay, we are here, me, my body, we are just two poles of the same dimension, and I am somewhere all spread all over this dimension. That's, I would say, my spirituality. And that's a lot of experience, and I could reinforce this awareness every time that I practice ballet. Because when I practice, when I experience something physical, something with my body, I can recall myself, okay, that's it. You are here. That's you, the whole you. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah,
It was very difficult.
No, you have answered my question, and I love the answer you just gave me. Also, because there's another question that I was gonna ask you more about your book, and I can just use the very last sentences you just pronounced to smooth to transition into this next question. And that's something that really struck me when I read your book was when you describe the experience of a, say, first ballet class. And the first thing you say, it's your own body image in the mirror. And you feel awkward because for the first time, maybe, or maybe not, but it's possible that for the first time you perceive your body as something external from yourself, something else. Um, but it's not really something else. It's something that is still part of you, yet is not completely part of you. And that's this relationship. So it's not the mind controlling the body when you dance, because the mind shouldn't be fully involved, or otherwise you would just everything would just come out extremely rigid. It's about the body, so the mind cooperating with the body um, to allow the body to execute things, positions, transitions, movements, then that it otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So it's kind of the experience of an alterity, of something different, which is which is, however, still a part of yourself. And it's a kind of a, and see, yes, I mean, it's a kind of Hegel's idea of antithesis and then synthesis again. So it's like experiencing your body as something different, which then can be reincorporated and reintegrated within a whole new dimension, which is yourself. And my question was, okay, first of all, if you want to say something more about this, because I just tried to summarize it. And then what kind of advice would you give to someone who has completely lost their connection with their body? Because for some people, it might be a little bit easier. For some people, it might be different or maybe more complex or more just difficult. I can see this not just in dance, but any other discipline or sports. I see, like, sometimes when you train clients, some people understand and execute certain patterns of movement a little bit better or just more easily than others. some people are better at certain movements, at moving certain joints rather than others. And that also reflects more often a kind of a psychological, different level of balance. Some people are more, they're stiff in certain areas, reflecting potential barriers in psychological areas, and some people are more flexible, reflecting a certain flexible mind too. Some people can move certain parts and can't move others, and so forth. But as you said, you don't need to be a professional dancer to dance or to experience dance, but everyone should kind of be able to dance. So my question is, assuming everyone should be able to dance, what kind of advice would you give to someone who has completely lost their relationship with their body and still needed to dance?
Yeah, I thank you for this question, because I think it focuses on the very core of my book. It's what's the most important message that I would like to give with my book. I think that something that everyone can learn from dance is that we are a whole. We have body and mind. They are connected. They are just two names for the same thing, just seen from different perspectives. And you have to have a good balance with these two different strengths, two different dimensions, because you are this. If they are unbalanced, you are. So you have to try to find a way to live this relationship without controlling it too much. You have just, in a certain way, we are doing the same here. We are trying to have a dialogue without interrupting each other, without being too powerful against each other, without controlling too much the conversation. And this is a way to have a good spontaneous conversation that is well balanced. Everyone can say what they have to say. There are different perspectives, and we are all growing together because we are talking to each other instead of one against each other. And it's like an internal dialogue that with mind and body, but you can't control it because the body doesn't speak language. So it doesn't speak a proper language. It doesn't have words to try to explain what he feels, what he would like to do. And that's a problem in learning dance, because every teacher know, every dancer know, you have to try to come up with different metaphors, try to explain something that you can also anatomically describe, but that would be of no use. Yeah. So you just imagine you have you are suspended from the top of your head, and imagine that you are like a bee with a very thin waist, and they are two different parts of you, and you are just like, okay, so what am I right now?
This reminds me reminds me of something very funny, because I practiced belly dance for a very long time. Then I still practice, but no, I don't join classes anymore, just because I haven't been able to find any good team, of friends, or even a good teacher.
Yeah, that's a big problem too.
That's a big problem.
We can't discuss it, but just because everyone should know it's a problem.
It's a problem, yes, because you need to find a good teacher. You need to find good, girls to get along with. Not just girls, but in the case of belly dance, usually it's women. And but anyway, so I still practice, by myself sometimes, but obviously I lost some motivation over the last 6-7 years. But anyway, no, but that's really funny, because I remember the first, so basically, whereas ballet still belongs to the Western kind of culture, so it's kind of translatable, even though it's never fully translatable, but it is, somehow fully translatable within our languages, like, but within kind of our cultural language. Belly dance, yeah, it was invented in the West, in the Western society as well, but it's got like a more, like it's got deeper roots, which originate, back apparently in the, I don't know, in the Egyptian slaves, and women dancing in the harem when they were kind of left alone by the husband, and it was a sacred dance originally. So even music, it's not the same kind of music. So you can't break a choreography down into 8, because it doesn't match, and the movements are completely untranslatable. There's no anatomy that can explain how those movements can be made. The only way is to practice them and to use metaphors, as you were saying, like pretend you have a big 8 in your belly, or pretend you have I don't know, like just or just some cues that can be done. Say, okay, relax your neck, and then just try to slide your your face. But I remember when I first started, my teacher would discourage everyone who wanted to leave, who wanted to quit, from quitting, unless he'd been already 2 or 3 months of practice. Because she said at least 8 to 12 weeks is all you need to learn the basic, drills. Just even, I mean, nothing major, nothing, too fancy, but just the first, like 2 or 3 basic movements. You need at least 8 to 12 weeks of constant practice. So please don't quit. Then past those 2-3 months, you're free to quit if you haven't learned, yet, and you have lost your motivation. Then you're free to go. But please stay for this long. And but I have to say that I've seen, quite a lot of women who never fully learned most of, or maybe not most, but half of the movements, in spite of the years. Like they could have taken classes for 2-3 years, and yet they would have some rigidity in some movements. And I mean, and that's a shame, because that's when you really experience this discrepancy between body and mind. Like the mind knows what the body should be able to do, and the body can't do it, and the mind can't teach the body how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's they just can't agree anymore. And that's really sad to see too. And I liked another thing that I liked from your book was the role of the teacher in all of this, and the interpretation as well. So which are connected. So how a good teacher teaches you, as you said, just by using metaphors, or other sort of translations, so how they teach you to become a good dancer. And but also because there's so much freedom in this, because again, it's not a rigid structure that gets translated. I was also interested in the margin left for individuality and interpretation, because you wrote one point that what differentiates a pro dancer from just an amateur is basically how they transition from a pose to the other, which seems so natural and extra human, or like beyond human. And so yes, I wanted to ask you about the role of teachers in this kind of language barrier, language problem that we have. and then the role of interpretation and individuality as well, and also how free your body has to be from your mind for you to fully develop this kind of individual I don't know, I don't even know what to call it, individual perfection, or highest interpretation of full potential as a dancer, because maybe you got good genetics, so you got great genetics and you can become pro dancer. I don't know, I mean, I'm just throwing it everything that comes to my mind which relates to this topic, but I know you're smart enough to understand what I'm trying to say, so yeah, please.
I think most of your questions has to do with what I try to explain using two different words that have similar meanings, that are rules and law. Like, you have to learn the rules of dance, and the teacher have an important role in that. It's like crucial. You can't do without a teacher. Even though you are a pro, you would always need a teacher, because you need extra eyes on what you are doing, because you can't be aware of all the parts of your body together. That's the reason why many pros take videos of themselves having classes and trying choreography, because they need to have a different perspective. And the teacher is very important. You should be able to take a lesson also with other teachers. That's because you need every language linguistic information that you could get. So maybe a different teacher would use different word, and at some point you hear the word that you needed to hear, and just wow, you can immediately do what you couldn't do before. And also it's important, the teacher, because it's the first body that you see in front of you dancing. Try to, make his or her body communicate with your own. Like, I'm doing this, try to do the same in a very, pre-linguistic dimension, like the children try to imitate each other. And also because the teacher can touch you, not of course in a sexual way, but they have to touch you, because you need to be aware of muscle that you normally wouldn't use. Yes. And they stay there, and they point at your muscle, and they squeeze them and say, that's what you should feel. Try to memorize what you are feeling, what's your sensation right now, and to recall it later. So the teacher has the role to instruct you and to let you know the rules. You can memorize them rationally. You can do that also, I think, with ballet dance, with contemporary dance. They are not very rational rule, but you have in your mind some reference points. But you have to know your body in order to let those rules not being just something theoretical, not being just a theory, but to become real. They have to be embodied. They have to find a singular body, and you have to know what's your body like, how your body does some movements. You know the theory, you know how a movement should be done, but unless you have tried with your own body to do that movement, you know nothing about it. And you learn your body doing what you try to do. You learn, I try to explain that with the term law, because it's like the body is your law. You cannot outlaw your body. because it's the only reality you have. You can try to extend the possibility of your body, but within the characteristics of your body itself. And I think that in there, you can find the freedom, the individuality in interpretation, because I think when I wrote that a pro and an amateur differs, because you can watch a pro running through the stage because they have to go from here to there, and they run and they didn't stop dancing although they are running, because I try to define dance as a full commitment of the body. You cannot go outside dance. It's like, it's like acting. You can't watch a film where at some point an actor say, oh, I'm tired, I have to go now, I can't remember the line. You have to be there, and you have to dance fully with your own body for the whole time you are dancing. I would say in front of a public, it's not necessarily so, but the whole time you are dancing, your whole body is dancing. Your mind should support your body and let your body do the dance it knows. And I think the difference is not having it more easy to do some movements, but just try to be there as much as you can. So in this way, I've seen professional dancers. They are trained, of course, to run as they are dancing, but in some dancer you can see that they are not really there, while you can watch an amateur doing a great piece of dance, which maybe they are not so clean and beautiful as someone who has the right body to do so, but they are so there, and you are just full with this presence, and you can't stop looking at them because they are great. I think that is something that everyone can achieve in real life. I mean, in everyday life, you can try to be as there as you can, just letting your body not do what it would like to do. Of course, I maybe would like to stand up right now, but I won't do that because it's not what I really want to do. But my body may feel like doing it. I could find, always trying to find a balance, like in dance, of course, where you have always to find a balance to do what you are doing. You have first to find a balance and then do the movement. And it's like living life. You can't just sit there, take a rest from life, and learn how to live in your own body with your own mind. You just have to try to, figure it out, balancing things and being there.
Yeah, I love this. And so, in bodybuilding, we always talk about mind-muscle connection. Basically, it means that doesn't matter, how hard you think you train, as long as you don't get your mind involved, and as long as your mind doesn't feel, so as long as you don't feel the right muscle contracting, you won't grow as much as you could, because of many also biological factors that happen. But the mind muscle connection is crucial, and unfortunately there are a lot of people who struggle being in the present, being in the moment. There are a lot of people who struggle feeling their muscles contracting and relaxing. I have one of the tools I use with my clients, people that I coach, is fitness it's a mindful fitness questionnaire, which can be used during their workouts. So there are like questions, you know, they can ask themselves, and they can assess. There are scales like of 1 to 5 and 1 to 10, and they can use them pre, post, and during workout to assess the some emotional and psychological aspects of themselves on the same day, and some exercises as well, so they can also, so they can assess how the training can affect their own psychological balance. So maybe that they rate themselves has I don't know, 5 out of 10 stressed out before, like prior to training. Then they score, then they rate themselves 1 out of 10 you know, post training. So they can understand they can also then, you know, think about what parts, what body part they trained that day, and so they can see how that training affected their you know, emotional state. But also during the exercise, they can see like how much am I able to control the movement, like how much am I able to feel the muscle contract, how much, you know, am I able to concentrate in spite of the noisy environment behind me. And so people can assess themselves, and they not only can see whether, you know, they're able to do something or not, but they can also say how much they can you know, do or cannot do that. And then, you know, it changes with time, and then I mean, that's something that I also use on myself from time to time. And I think, you know, raising awareness is the first step, okay, to achieving anything in life, but especially when it comes to performance, it's crucial, because
Yeah, I
the
agree.
mind muscle connection has to be on point all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and I also wanted to ask you, so I think it was in the introduction of your book, you draw a parallel in which you say, why am I talking in these terms about dance and not about any other scientific discipline? So scientific, I mean a sports discipline, sorry. And you say that's because in dance the body is always the end and not just the means to performance or to a victory or to something else. And I use exactly the same parallel in my own introduction, and I say, why do I describe bodybuilding as a perfect parallel for self-building as opposed to any other sports or discipline? And that's precisely because in bodybuilding, developing your body's full potential is the end and not just the means to something else. So I wanted to know your take on this, and if you can say something more about dance and why the body is the end. I mean, why it's pretty obvious, but you can add more interesting things to this point, I guess. So, and then anything else you want to say, of course.
I struggle a lot trying to figure out if I have to give a definition of dance, because you know it's a usual way to do philosophy, just trying to focus on your object before and then try to say something about it. And I have to like have a you know, work in progress definition, because we have somehow to find a way to agree on what we're talking about. But I couldn't find a very precise way to define what's dance, what's not dance. Also because the history of dance is so rich, and so, you know, there are so many different type of dances and performances, and the only minimal definition that I found was that your body have to be fully there to do something. A dance movement is a movement in which your body is engaged, all of it, not just a tiny part. You have to be there, and you have to fully be there, because you have to be in that dimension. You can't go somewhere else. I could, of course, have a dance exercise here and just think about what I will have as lunch, or what I have to do in the afternoon, but I can't dance, really properly dance, if my mind is somewhere else. I simply cannot do it. So I try to find a way to define dance, and of course, given such a minimal definition, I have to try to find the differences between dance and other kind of body experience. And I came up with this one, like, you know, in dance, you use your body for like itself. You try to explain something. You don't have to, sorry, you try to communicate something, like even just your body you want to communicate, but you try to say something, to do something artistical, so to say. And you don't have that. For example, when you swim in the Olympics, you can have lots of sportsmen and women that are so beautiful in what they do, that you can say, oh wow, that's like watching a dancer, watching an artist doing something great with themselves. But it's like something more that you have in sports. While in dance, you can't just have a good, perfect movement without the engagement, without the being there, without the, you know, the communication, without everything that makes a difference between dancing something and just executing a movement.
Mm-mm.
And I think that there's, although what I've said, I think that there's a way to practice every discipline in a way that is meaningful to yourself. It's like, you know, it's a way of being here in the world and in life. You are this body, you are also this body. You try to do something with it that is not like, you know, winning a medal. That's like something that can happen or not, but it's not the point. And I think in bodybuilding, maybe because you are just so focused on trying to find a good connection within yourself, I can imagine quite well, although I have never done bodybuilding in my life, but I follow you on the social, and I see the way you are doing it. It's the way that makes it meaningful, because you are constructing yourself.
Yeah.
Never mind its body. Never mind you could be doing it with another physical activity. Given that you do it with a certain, you know, motivation, intention, also with a certain frequency, and you know, everything that is common in dance and other practice. Also, I think in bodybuilding there's an aesthetic experience involved as well, although very different from ballet, for example.
I actually think not so different though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever watched a show And actually, usually who wins is like also the most flexible one on stage, because there are a lot of poses.
Yeah. There's something.
I mean,
very common points.
Yeah, I know you can't be as light as a ballerina if you want to win a show. Otherwise, you would just place last. And the opposite is true. If you want to be a good ballerina, you need to be light. But the grace, yeah, let's call it like the grace of movement and of, you know, transition does play a major role in bodybuilding shows as well. And yes, it's about sculpting the body. So, you know, like when you're on a bulk, you eat a lot because you need to build muscle, but then you start dieting, you start cutting because you need to reveal what you've built in the off season. And so yeah, it's about aesthetic, but then there's grace as well, because posing is not easy. Like some people are better athletes than others because they just pose better. They might have a worse physique, but they know how to present it better than someone else. So
yeah, it has something to do with being natural.
Yes, to come
like,
in,
you know, grace, like
being natural and also coming across as natural, because I think you want everyone to perceive you as natural as well. It's not just being, because I can be natural and then super clumsy, so I want to be natural.
That was I was trying to say, like, in a gracious way.
In a gracious way, yes. I agree. I agree. And I just wanted to ask you, where would you place some there are some disciplines like gymnastics, okay, which kind of fall in between, because or like a synchronized swim, like you know, when I watch those, you know, ladies, I'm like wow. Like when I love, like I love watching gymnastics, and I love even practicing some skills, you know, just because I find it fascinating. But I really love watching the shows when you can see all the nice costumes, you know, with all the glitters, and those athletes are awesome. Like the way they move and control their body is incredible, is insane. But again, they do that. Is the body the end, or is it just the means to win the medal? Because at the end of the day, they are scored for their performance, and there are certain very strict rules that they need to stick with if they want to win the you know, the game. So I don't know, me, I've never really thought about it, so I'm not sure whether I would place gymnastics in this kind of ranking. I don't know if you've got any ideas.
Well, I think it could be very close to dance for the people that practice it, because they maybe can feel some of the engagement, some of the commitment of the body-mind relationship, and so on. But the main difference is that you have to, you know, in a more specific way than in dance, you have to meet some rules. You have to do some movements in a certain way. You are not allowed to have a license to do what you want to do. Of course, in dance is the same. In some choreography, for example, you cannot just go on stage and do whatever you want and say, okay, I have done, you know, the dying swan. Why you just, you know, move around the stage? But it's a matter of flexibility, I would say. I mean, mind flexibility. In dance, you can, of course, have some critics that say, that was not so pure dying swan, that was not so good, because I expect that to do something different. But in gymnastics, you cannot have any flexibility. There's a certain level that you have to, you know, there's a perfect way to do it. while in dance you don't have it.
Yes.
You have many perfect ways of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can explain
No,
myself.
I think I see what you mean, and I have because I think the problem arises where you give much of the responsibility of the decisional responsibility to the judges. I guess wherever you
Mm.
see a judge or someone in the position to criticize someone else, that's some kind of margin for error, and that what maybe creates confusion. That's what allows me to compare gymnastics with dance. But if I think of gymnastics as you describe it, so as a discipline with very strict rules, and doesn't matter if the judge prefers an athlete to the other, because it could be the same that a referee would do during a football game. So as long as there are these strict rules to be applied and to stick with in order for you to win the game, the competition, then okay, the body is not really the end, but it's still the means to your victory. But yes, if you watch a ballet show, and doesn't matter if there's a critic in the in the audience who doesn't really appreciate certain movements, but that's not the point, because dancers are not trying to win any medal. They're just trying to be themselves and to dance as as well as they could. They're trying to be the best dancers they've ever been. And that's the same also in bodybuilding. You always say you don't beat your competitors, the other competitors you compete against. You only have to beat yourself, your previous version of yourself. And that's the same, because yes, there are judges, because there are shows to be won, and there are scores, but again, yes, there are some fixed scores as in gymnastics, but the scores do not really depend on tricks to be executed. The scores are
Okay.
for the actual body, so they're there to assess how symmetric, so the symmetry and the muscularity, and yes, those also come across through posing, but you don't really judge the posing itself. You judge what emerges from the poses. So and in this, the body is the ultimate goal. It's the end and not the means.
And you have dance competitions too.
Yes, and you have that.
They are very
too,
important, yeah. And you don't judge if a ballerina can do 1, 2, or 3 pirouettes, but you judge. There are criteria that you have to match, and you can assign a medal in dance too. But it's just a part of a bigger game. I think, as in bodybuilding, the main goal is not to be the perfect man, the perfect woman, just to dance the best as you can, do the best you can with your body.
To
and I think that's
your
a lesson
potential.
Yeah, exactly. As you say in your podcast.
Yeah. Yes, basically. Yeah, I love this. Sorry, you were saying something. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was saying that I think that's the greatest lesson that you can get from doing whatever you would like to do: ballet, yoga class, bodybuilding, or just walk in the park or in the woods, and just be there with yourself and just feel your body and try to do something with it. I think that's the greatest way to try to be a dancer in your life, try to be your own body.
I love this. So I think it couldn't be any better conclusion than this for this episode. So yes, so guys, if you've never danced before, just start feel in your body, and you'll become one step closer to the best dancer you can be. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so where can people find you on social media? Because you're quite active as well.
Yes, I have as Filosofia della Danza. I have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. I have not been on other social so far. I'm too old to be on TikTok. But yes, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. On Facebook, I also have a personal page that I share with other people. I mean, a personal profile that I share with other people. So under my name, you can find me.
All the links in the show notes. So yeah, thank you so much. Okay, last 3 questions.
Thank you.
I need to ask you the last 3 questions I always ask everyone. So last book you read, last meal you ate, and last body part you train, which in your case can be like last ballet workout you did. I don't know. Let's start from the book.
Okay. Curiously enough, I'm reading a book on quantistic physics.
I love this. That's one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm reading Lederman, Quantistic Physics for Poets, because I just wanted to start from the very, basic beginners. And I love it. I mean, I came across it because of other works I was doing, and it's stunning. It's so great. I have to, try to not to be too enthusiastic, or I would enroll in the university as soon as I can.
Yeah, I was actually so when I was in my last secondary school year, I was going to enroll in physics, but then I kind of reconsidered my decision because because I wasn't sure, whether it would give me a brilliant future. So eventually I decided to go for philosophy instead. No, just but because I guess the thing is the way I regarded physics was as a very strict, discipline, very narrow field, and that's not what I wanted. That wouldn't reflect the kind of person I wanted to become as a grown up. So I wanted to study something that would encompass more disciplines, and that would leave me more freedom to then create my own path. But I love physics, like
yeah, it's great. It's so much bigger than me, but
yeah.
It's great. It's great subject.
That's fascinating. Yes. Okay, so last meal you ate?
I ate breakfast with yogurt and cereal, and a glass of juice and a cup of coffee. That was my breakfast.
Staple. And last body part you trained?
Okay, yesterday it was Sunday, so I didn't have any ballet class. I found some training online that this whole lockdown period, many professional dancer has put trainings online, and I did something for legs and then abs. But I did abs on my own, and I did too much, and now I'm so sore. But yeah, I will get through the day with my sore muscles.
You having a practice today, or you off?
Not yet. Maybe later.
Oh, but you having a practice like later today?
I don't have a class today. I would do something on my own.
On your own.
My own. Yeah.
So no more abs today. Yeah.
No, definitely no.
Thank you so much for
thank you so much
today. It was really cool, and I really loved all the topics we covered. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.